بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. أما بعد, Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. By the way, I am Mara Maradi Lagantao, the second reporter of Group 7. And our topic for today is all about the sixth stage, stagnation and decline. My report starts with reformers. So what is reformers? According to Merriam-Webster, one that works for or are just reform. It is a person who makes change to something in order to improve it. Introduction. In spite of the general decay described above, there existed from time to time throughout this period a few outstanding scholars who opposed Taqlid and dared to raise the banner of Ijtihad. They called for a return to the roots of the religion, to the true sources of Islamic law, and to reliance on this foundation above all else. Some of these reformers and their contribution are described hereafter. Sa pag sinabing reformers, they are persons who call for a return to the roots of religion, to the true sources of Islamic law, and to reliance. They are scholars who oppose Taqlid and dare to raise the banner of Ijtihad. Ahmad ibn Taymiyyah, one of the greatest scholars of his time. Initially, he had studied fiqh according to the Hanbali madhab. He studied the sources of Islamic law in depth and mastered all the Islamic sciences. He examined the writings of various sects which had broken off from Islam. Ahmad ibn Taymiyyah jihad against the Mongols who had occupied the eastern and northern provinces of the former Abbasid state. And according to the other sources, Ahmad ibn Taymiyyah was not foremost among the reformers of this period, but because of his challenge of the status quo, many of his contemporaries declared him an apostate and had the authorities jail him repeatedly. So si Ibn Taymiyyah, dahil sa kanyang hamon sa status quo, marami sa kanyang mga kapanahunan ang nagdeklara that he is an apostate. And dahil doon, paulit-ulit siyang ipinakulong ng mga autoridad. So we all know that Ibn Taymiyyah was a great scholar of his time. He studied fiqh according to the Hanbali madhab. He did not restrict himself. He studied also the sources of Islamic law in depth and mastered all the Islamic sciences, or ulum. He also examined the writings of various sects which had broken off from Islam. He studied religious books like Christian, Yahudi or Jews, wrote extensive critiques on all of them. Also, Ahmad ibn Taymiyyah was jihad against the Mongols. So, sino nga ba yung mga Mongols na tinutukoy dito? So, they are people who had occupied the eastern and northern provinces of the former Abbasid state. Abbasid people, if I'm not mistaken, is their religion is Sunni Islam Muslim. They are Muslim Sunni Islam that were among of the greatest Islamic scholars of their time and carried on the next generation of the banner of Ijtihad and a return to the pure sources of Islam. And kabilang dito si Ibn Qayyim and Ibn Kathir. Si Ibn Qayyim was a great scholar in the field of fiqh and hadith criticism, and Ibn Kathir a master in tafsir, history, and hadith. Number 2. Muhammad ibn Ali ash-Shawkani. Among of the reformers of this period, he studied fiqh according to the Jaydi madhab. He wrote a number of works in fiqh and its fundamentals, in which issues studied from the points of view of all madhabs were concluded with the solution based solely on the most accurate proofs and the most convincing arguments. He took also the position that Taqlid was haram and wrote a number of books on the topic. For example, Al-Qawl al-Mufid fi Hukm at-Taqlid. Muhammad ibn Ali ash-Shawkani, born in the town of Shawkan in Yemen. So kabilang siya sa mga reformador. He studied fiqh also kagaya ni Ibn Taymiyyah. But ang fiqh na ito is according to the Zaydi madhab. Ang sinabing Zaydi madhab is one of the major city madhab of fiqh. So si Muhammad ibn Ali ash-Shawkani is kilala siya bilang outstanding scholar ng kanyang time. He studied also a hadith sa kanyang panahon. He freed himself of the madhab and began making independent of the ijtihad. Sumulat siya ng ilang mga gawa mula sa fiqh at ginawa itong batayan kung saan pinag-aralan ang mga isyu mula sa pananaw ng lahat ng mga madhab. We'll conclude with the solution based solely on the most accurate proofs of the most convincing arguments. So, he took the position that taqlid was haram and wrote a number of books on the topic. Kagaya ng books na ginawa niya is Al-Qawl Al-Mufid fi Hukm at-Taqlid. So, consequently, because of that, he also came under attack from the most of the scholars of his time. Number 3, Ahmad ibn Abdurrahim, better known as Shah Waliullah Dehlawi. He had mastered the various Islamic sciences. He called for the reopening of the door of ijtihad and the reunification of the school of fiqh. He thought that everyone was free to choose a particular decision. Ahmad ibn Abdurrahim o mas kilala sa Shah Waliullah Dehlawi. Siya ay pinanganak sa subcontinent of India na kung saan ang taklid ay pinakalaganap. So, after he mastered ng iba't ibang agham ng Islam, siya ay nananawagan to reopening of the door of ijtihad and the reunification of the schools of fiqh. In these efforts to re-examine Islamic principles and to find out what authority the legal schools with their regulations. Shah Waliullah rejuvenated the study of hadith, although he did not to go so far as to reject the existing fiqh schools. Nevertheless, he thought that everyone was free to choose a particular decision different from that taken by the school to which he belonged himself. So sabi ni Shah Wali, lahat ay free na pumili na kung saan isang particular na desisyon na iba sa number 4, ginawa ng Jamal ad-Din al-Afghani, one of the modern thinker. He traveled throughout the Muslim world calling for reform. So isa sa mga nilakbayan niya is the country of India, Makkah, which is ang Saudi Arabia, and the Constantinia or Constantinople. So siya ay nanirahan in Egypt. So si Al-Jamal, he called for free political, religious, and scientific thought and denounced the taqlid and state corruption. So he took these ideas at the University of Jamal ad-Din. Ideas were extremist. So one of the example is he elevated the human mind and its logical deduction to a level equal to that of divine revelation. So because of his intention, so because of that happening, he became suspect due to his involvement with the Masonic movement, which was at that time establishing new branches in the Middle East. So ano nga ba yung tinatawag dito na Masonic movement na kung saan branches in the Middle East? So it is the oldest and most famous Islamic university in the Muslim world. It was first established in Egypt by the Fatimid state in the year of 361 Hijra calendar and 972 in Common Era. 5. Muhammad Abdu, one of the Afghani's most famous students, he made a fatwa allowing Muslims to be involved in business transaction which is involving interest. So he based this ruling on the fiqh principle that dire necessity makes the forbidden allowable. So Muhammad Rashid Rida, one of the Muhammad Abdu main student. So si Muhammad Rashid Rida, yes, he reject most of his teacher exercises. However, mayroon naman sa mga student ni Muhammad Abdu become the nucleus of the extreme modernist movement and debated in many areas even more than their teacher. So, isa na rito si Qasim Amin. He was the first to make the vehement attack on polygamy, the simplicity of Islamic divorce, and the use of the veil. We have also scholars of the 20th century. and one of them is Hassan al-Banna, the founder of the Ikhwan Musliman movement Sayyid. The second one is Abul A'la Maududi, the founder of the Jama'at Islami movement and more recently the great hadith scholar of our era. And the last one, Nasir ad-Din al-Albani, have picked up the banner of Islamic revival and have called for the unification of the madhabs. Summary section. Number 1 is Ijtihad in all its forms was put aside, and the blind following, which is the taqlid, one of the four madhabs, was made compulsory on all Muslims. The number 2 is the four madhabs became totally incompatible, and the Muslim Ummah was virtually split into four religious sects. So, in Islam, we have four madhabs, which is ang Hanafi, Maliki, Shafi'i, and Hanbali. So, ang nangyari is, because of that is, the Muslim Ummah was virtually split into the four religious sects. The number 3 is scholarly activity was restricted to writing commentaries on previous works and promoting the position of the author's particular madhab, as in the period of consolidation. The number 4 is there were commendable attempts by certain reformers to revive the original and dynamic nature of fiqh, but their efforts proved unequal to the task of eradicating madhab fanaticism, which had become so deeply ingrained. 5 is attempt at the codification of the Islamic law were made, but the results suffered from sectarian views, and with the advent of European colonialism, they were supplanted by European law codes. Number 6 is there has been some lessening of madhab fanaticism in recent years as a result of the reformist movements and the widespread teaching of comparative fiqh and the modern institution of learning. And the last one, which is the number 7, is the state of stagnation and decline of fiqh in the existence of madhab factionalism have continued until the present day. That's all. Thank you. Shukran ala husn istima'i wa jazakumullahu khairan. Wassalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.